The Trump administration's mass deportation campaign reportedly has a new weapon, the Postal Service. The Washington Post is reporting that a little-known investigative arm of it has joined the federal task force to use data from mail and packages as part of a massive immigration crackdown. That's according to two sources familiar and records obtained by the paper. I want to bring in NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell. Also here with me is the Washington Post Jacob Boggich, who is behind that reporting, and Washington Post national reporter and MSNBC contributor Carol Leonnig, co-author, just to be fair to your friendly co-author, A Very Stable Genius and I Alone Can Fix It. Thanks to all of you for being here. Jacob, even if you're not in any government system, there is still a chance that at some point you use the mail. What type of information could that give the government?
Well, first of all, don't forget Carol's book, Zero Fail on the Secret Service. Excellent read.
Yes, it is.
What kind of information could that give the Secret Service from, not the Secret Service, immigration officials from your mail? A lot of information. Your name, your address. Think about other people that live in your home, so something about your family structure. There's mail tracking information or package tracking information. So if you order something via e-commerce, how that package or that envelope is getting to you. In some cases, your credit card information, your IP address. There's just an incredible depth and richness to this data that is different than what we've reported on about data from your taxes or Social Security, because this is where the government reaches you 6 days a week to give you your mail, the most kind of mundane government activity. And
so from there, Jacob, how would they use that information to track down an undocumented person?
What we've been reporting on across federal agencies is Homeland Security investigators' difficulty literally locating people, millions upon millions of people. We reported that the IRS, they were looking for 7 million people to help the IRS locate them because they don't have accurate addresses for them. With the Postal Service, you do have that accurate address, and you can verify it day over day over day based on items that are being delivered.
So, Carol, I think it's fair to say throughout these first 100 days plus of the Trump administration, there have been headlines almost daily about the climate of fear that undocumented people are living in. My colleagues at NBC, for example, just wrote about a married couple who self-deported. They were so afraid that the undocumented partner, who's been here 20 years from Mexico, would get shipped to El Salvador. Is this escalation that Jacob reports on a surprise at all? Or has fear and fear tactics always been a part of Donald Trump's game plan, whether it was business or politics?
Fear is always and has been in his first presidency, and more dramatically now, fear is a cornerstone of Donald Trump's immigration policy. You know, and fear is part of what he's trying to instill in the federal workforce as well. I want to give a kudos to Jacob and Hannah Nathanson, who broke this exclusive and keep breaking exclusives on what is going on inside the federal government, and also remark upon what's so startling about this, right? Two ironies for you, Chris. One, in their story, they describe a document in which a Postal Service individual is remarking on how we need to play nicely in the sandbox with the administration. In other words, it implied that the Postal Service didn't want to basically turn over all of its sensitive data, much of it governed by the Privacy Act, but probably felt some pressure to do what the Department of Homeland Security and ultimately Stephen Miller and the President of the United States want accomplished, which is more routes for how to arrest immigrants, illegal and not. Second most important context and irony for me is that the Postal Service's inspection service, this police force, if you will, little known, was involved in the investigation of Donald Trump's election interference case, for which the special counsel indicted Donald Trump in 2023. The Postal Inspection Service was critical to providing the evidence of how Donald Trump's campaign had fomented and plotted and created a fake elector scheme to try to block the certification of Congress. And here, in a new presidency, they are essentially, from what we can tell, being pressured to help in the immigration battle and policy that Donald Trump has now.
So, Kelly, the president, as you know, in that extensive interview with ABC, said his biggest accomplishment in his first 100 days has been what he's been able to do at the border. He stood by everyone being deported is a bad guy. He says they're being careful. Does the administration think you can be careful without due process?
Well, Chris, one of the things that's notable about how the president's responding to these questions is he has a kind of a vigorous defense of his policy, which we know is broadly popular in terms of having a secure border. The question about the tactics used, the legal authorities used, that's another area, and Americans who are polled have some concerns about how that's been done. The president had talked a lot about the worst offenders, people with criminal records being removed from the country. We've seen it has gone much beyond that. The president today in the cabinet meeting emphasized one of the things that you don't hear from him much, and that is he is saying it's the business of the lawyers, deferring to Attorney General Bondi in the Department of Justice, sort of giving himself some distance from some of these questions. When he spoke with ABC's Terry Moran, he had a vigorous exchange about various aspects of his policies on immigration and the question of due process. Should due process be afforded to all those who are in the United States, not just citizens, but anyone in the United States? Here's part of the conversation he had in that interview.
In our country, even bad guys get due process, right?
If people come into our country illegally, there's a different standard. These are illegal. They came in illegally.
But they get due process.
Well, they get a process where we have to get them out. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the Venezuelans.
They get whatever my lawyers say.
So he again is deferring to lawyers, but the Supreme Court over time has asserted that anyone in the United States is afforded certain constitutional protections. Only where the Constitution gives specific rights to U.S. citizens is there a distinction. And so due process is something that should be afforded. Now, some of this, the administration argues that immigration courts have different legal standards and so forth. But this is one of the thorniest areas for the administration. The president was also asked if he's done anything, and the Secretary of State, to reach out to El Salvador on the case of Abrego Garcia. They have not disclosed any action they've taken to facilitate, that's the word the Supreme Court used, putting that obligation on the administration to return Abrego Garcia for further processing or adjudication of his case. He's the man from El Salvador, but living in Maryland, who's been the subject of so much attention.
So, Carol, what's the end goal here?
Pressure that the Department of Homeland Security feels is from the White House to meet a number, which our Washington Post reporters, again, exclusively reported, 1 million. 1 million immigrants are how many people Donald Trump and Stephen Miller want removed from the country, to basically sort of show the public they are delivering on the agenda that is very popular of securing our borders, especially our southern border. But the problem is, Chris, that the rush to meet that political goal, that PR high, is pressing the Department of Homeland Security to find people that they then deport and put on planes who may or may not be, as the president said in that ABC interview, illegal immigrants. I mean, we now know about people that have been accidentally deported. And the reason that Kilmar Abrego Garcia has gotten so much attention in the press is because he was accidentally deported and put in an El Salvadoran prison. And yet he is not being brought back. So the fear is that people are going to be deported not only without due process, which is a fundamental right, but in the rush to meet this campaign essentially goal to deliver on a campaign promise, to show Donald Trump's base that he's doing what they wanted him to do, some innocent people are going to get caught up in the process.
Kelly and Jacob and Carol, three great reporters on a really important story. Thank you all so much. Appreciate you.